A man is days away from execution, and right now, a battle is unfolding outside the prison walls that could determine whether that execution ever happens. Not because anyone is denying that a horrific crime took place. 3 people lost their lives in Memphis in 1994, and their families have carried that pain for more than 3 decades. But because there is a question that has never fully gone away. What if critical evidence was never examined? What if the answer has been sitting inside government files all along? An alternate suspect has been identified. His fingerprints exist. His DNA exists. The evidence from the crime scene still exists. Yet the comparison that could potentially connect them has never been completed. Time is running out. The execution date is approaching fast. And if the state moves forward before that test is performed, the opportunity to learn the truth may disappear forever. Stay with me because this case becomes more unsettling the deeper you go. The events that led to this controversy began more than 3 decades ago. In February 1994, 3 people disappeared from Memphis, Tennessee. Those victims were Marcellus Anderson, his mother Deoese Anderson, and family friend Frederick Tucker. For days, relatives searched for answers while investigators attempted to determine what had happened. Then a discovery changed everything. Authorities were directed to a cemetery where they uncovered a scene that shocked even experienced investigators. The bodies of the 3 victims had been hidden beneath a recently placed casket. The unusual nature of the crime immediately drew public attention and intensified pressure on law enforcement to identify those responsible. As the investigation moved forward, attention eventually focused on 2 men, Tony Carruthers and James Montgomery. Prosecutors argued that both played roles in the kidnappings and murders. In 1996, jurors convicted them, and both received death sentences. At first, the legal paths of the 2 men appeared similar. Over time, however, those paths separated dramatically. Montgomery later obtained relief through the appeals process and eventually accepted a plea agreement that allowed him to leave prison years later. Carruthers remained on death row. What makes the case unusual is the evidence that was presented during the original trial. According to court records, prosecutors relied heavily on witness testimony rather than forensic evidence directly connecting Carruthers to the crime scene. No DNA match placed him there. No fingerprint evidence identified him as a participant. Instead, much of the state's argument depended on statements from individuals who claimed to possess information about the murders. Supporters of Carruthers argue that this distinction matters because forensic science has advanced significantly since the 1990s. Evidence that may have been impossible or impractical to analyze decades ago can sometimes be examined today with far greater precision. That reality has become one of the central issues in the debate surrounding the scheduled execution. One of the most discussed aspects of the case involves a witness whose testimony became a major component of the prosecution's argument. Defense attorneys have spent years challenging the reliability of that testimony and questioning the circumstances surrounding it. Courts reviewed those claims multiple times, yet disagreement about their significance never completely disappeared. Another issue concerns legal representation. During the years leading up to trial, Carruthers experienced repeated conflicts with defense counsel. Eventually, circumstances developed that resulted in him representing himself during critical stages of the proceedings. Appellate courts later examined the situation and concluded that legal requirements had been satisfied. Current attorneys, however, continue to argue that the record demonstrates serious concerns regarding his ability to adequately defend himself. The debate became even more intense after developments involving co-defendant James Montgomery. Following his release from prison, attention turned to statements he reportedly provided regarding the murders. According to filings submitted by attorneys representing Carruthers, Montgomery identified another individual as the person responsible for carrying out the killings. That individual, Ronnie Irving, was never prosecuted for the murders. He died years ago and cannot be questioned today. Yet what makes the claim significant is that biological material and fingerprints associated with him reportedly remain available for comparison purposes. Supporters of additional testing argue that this is where the controversy reaches its most important point. They contend that physical evidence recovered during the investigation has never been fully compared against material connected to the alternate suspect. If that is true, they argue modern forensic testing could potentially provide information unavailable to jurors during the original trial. Critics of that position point out that courts have repeatedly reviewed the conviction and found it legally valid. They argue that the justice system has already examined the evidence through numerous appeals and post-conviction proceedings. In their view, the existence of additional testing possibilities does not automatically undermine a verdict that has survived decades of legal scrutiny. As a result, two competing narratives now exist side by side. One emphasizes the finality of repeated court decisions. The other focuses on the possibility that unanswered forensic questions remain unresolved. As the execution date approached, the discussion expanded beyond courtrooms and legal filings. Advocacy organizations, innocence projects, former death row exonerees, and public figures began drawing attention to the case. Their argument was relatively straightforward. Before an irreversible punishment is carried out, every available scientific tool should be used to confirm the accuracy of the conviction. Among the most visible voices was Kim Kardashian, who publicly encouraged officials to consider the request for additional testing. Her involvement brought national attention to a case that had previously been followed primarily by legal observers and local media. The question at the center of the controversy remains remarkably simple. If biological evidence exists and an alternate suspect has been identified, should that evidence be tested before an execution proceeds? Supporters of testing believe the answer is obvious. They argue that a comparison could either strengthen confidence in the conviction or reveal information requiring further investigation. State officials and courts, however, have generally maintained that existing legal findings support the conviction and sentence. Their decisions reflect years of judicial review and extensive examination of the record. From that perspective, the case has already been evaluated repeatedly by judges tasked with determining whether constitutional standards were met. Yet public interest continues to grow because the consequences are permanent. Unlike many legal disputes, there is no opportunity to revisit the outcome after an execution occurs. That reality explains why debates surrounding death penalty cases often attract intense attention from both supporters and critics. For the families of the victims, the case represents decades of grief and unanswered pain. For advocates seeking additional testing, it represents a question they believe deserves a definitive scientific answer. For the courts, it represents a conviction that has been reviewed for many years. And for Tony Carruthers, it represents the final stage of a legal battle that has lasted most of his adult life. Whether additional testing occurs or not, the controversy surrounding the case has already raised broader questions about forensic evidence, capital punishment, and the role of modern science in reviewing old convictions. Those questions will likely continue long after the final legal decision is made. This story is still unfolding, and some of the most important developments may happen in the days ahead. If you want to follow every update, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss what comes next. The legal battle is continuing, public pressure is growing, and key decisions could arrive at any moment. Whether additional testing is approved, whether state officials take action, or whether the courts intervene before the scheduled execution, none of those questions have been fully answered yet. Right now, the future of this case remains uncertain, and the time remaining to change its course is becoming increasingly limited with every passing day.